be a hero. I'm just an ordinary guy, and I've reached my damn limits!
Your limit? Who decides what your limit is? Instead of overthinking your setbacks, just focus on moving forward.
Limits. They are things we encounter every day and can take many forms. We are limited all our life by rules, speed limits that tell us how fast to drive, physical barriers that stop us from going anywhere, or even our own physical limitations that stop us from achieving greatness. Media has always looked at limits. In every story, the character must have some sort of limit. But what happens when someone has no limit? Comics and anime have some of the most famous examples of characters who challenge the idea of limits and what it means to push past them. And even some characters have no limits at all. The question in these stories always seems to be, how do you write a problem or put a limit on someone that is designed to have no limits? And this often comes in the form of some plot device that limits the character's normal abilities. Or, what is often the most fascinating to watch is when they put the unstoppable force to face off against an immovable object. What better way to test someone with no limits than to put them against someone or something else that is unconquerable? We naturally love something about these stories. There's something about pushing past one's limits to see what is truly possible that we all aspire to. Some people have taken this on as an identity.
No limits, Devon!
Devon No Limits Larratt, in the eyes of many, is the face of arm wrestling as we know it, and the persona he takes on is one of limitless potential. However, Devon is not above his controversies. Devon is known for being a bit of a polarizing figure, namely in some of his online and in-person antics. In a sense, one of his main limits he pushes is the boundaries of the sport. The divide on the matter is pretty split. On one hand, many people love the idea of pure arm wrestling, with good sportsmanship, and in many ways, that's something we can all get behind. No one likes cheating or bad sportsmanship. On the other hand, people do enjoy spectacle. There's plenty to be said about playing a character. There's even something appealing about someone who plays a bit of a heel. The question is, what do we make of Devon's persona? Well, firstly, I think anyone who meets the guy will tell you there's a difference between the persona and the man. Most people would agree the question is one of his behavior in competition. So what is this behavior and why is it so divisive? To understand this question, we need to understand character alignment. In story writing, every character falls somewhere on this chart, or exhibits these traits at different times. Superman is the lawful good, the Joker, the chaotic evil. I would argue Devon plays a bit of a unique character, namely, a neutral good. A neutral good character typically acts altruistically, without regard for or against a common tradition. A neutral good character has no problem with cooperating with lawful officials, but does not feel beholden to anything that would stop good, except when it comes to breaking the law. In my mind, this encapsulates Devon's stage persona perfectly. One that will push right up against the limits of what the sport will allow, if it helps him win or helps grow the sport without completely breaking the law. This is something Devon is open to. The idea behind such a character is one that has the goal of benefiting everyone or benefiting the sport, in this case by pushing past many people's perceived limit of what the sport is. Take Batman as another example of this type of character. Does he break the law? Well, technically he's a vigilante, but we all still root for him, as we understand he's doing the right thing that needs to be done, even if some people don't appreciate what he does or feels if he's doing it the wrong way. Each fan of a sport has an idea of what that sport is supposed to be. In truth, a sport can be different things to different people. We can enjoy different parts of different sports for different reasons. For example, what's the best part of baseball? Would it be the final strikeout to win the game, or the walk-off home run? Both of these things can be the best, and it often usually depends on which team you're cheering for. Devon is a similar example. People have an idea of what the sport of arm wrestling is supposed to be, and Devon pushes that limit. Many people say they want an ambassador of the sport who's more like a lawful good character, someone who always does the right thing and performs within the letter and the spirit of the law. The problem with a neutral good character is it's a little harder to pin down. It's easy to support the person who does the right thing and gets a good result. But what about someone who pushes the limits and boundaries of what we think is right and still succeeds in winning matches and growing the sport? In this case, sometimes the lines become more blurred. The trouble we must work our way through is expanding our perspective of the sport. That does not mean arm wrestling cannot retain what we all love about it, but it does mean there is more to the sport than just what we like about it. Many people seem to find themselves on the Devon hate train, as ones who find themselves on the losing end of a bottom of the ninth walk-off home run. Just because it's not the result you wanted doesn't make inherently bad for the sport. I stated in my introduction that we all naturally like seeing limits being broken. There's something quite inspiring about the indomitable human spirit. There are some things that people don't like being broken. Laws are one thing most people can agree shouldn't be broken. In arm wrestling, if you were suddenly to use both hands, it would fundamentally break the rules of the sport and undermine what the sport is all about. But there is another thing that people don't like to be broken, and that is principles and tradition. That is to say, the spirit of what makes something what it is, that is not necessarily written down in the rules. In my estimation, this is what Devon pushes back on. Devon pushes the limits of what the spirit of arm wrestling is. It was not too long ago where people thought anything that wasn't hook pulling wasn't arm wrestling. And even still, there's much disdain for moves such as the King's move or other elements of the sport. If we think of Devon as someone who breaks the rules, then of course we can understand why people would dislike his approach to the sport. But if we can look at Devon Larratt as one who pushes the limits of the spirit of the sport, as someone who is willing to play the heel or the hero, an experimenter, or someone who pursues the good of the sport in the best way he knows how, as a neutral good figure. When we can understand Devon as the character he plays, it is then we can truly begin to understand what he really does. We can enjoy him when he wins, or even when he loses. I'm not claiming that you have to like everything he does, but what I am saying is, once we understand the character, we can at least begin to appreciate a different element of the sport of arm wrestling. The unstoppable force Devon faces is the spirit of arm wrestling and the fans. This is the story and the battle that his character battles. And the final question is, who will win? What will be the result? And what will be the next chapter of this story?